Hello and welcome back to another flute tip of the week. I know that the last couple of weeks my videos have been coming later in the day. I normally record these during the weekend so that I'm able to upload them first thing Monday morning. But this weekend was quite busy, and yesterday my friend took me for my belated birthday adventure. For her birthday, I surprised her with paintball. For my birthday, she surprised me with a picnic and a trampoline park. Birthday adventures are much more fun than simply birthday presents. Today, I wanted to talk about something that affects people of any skill level, and that is controlling our sound quality. So let's jump in and take a look. Explore different positions, embouchures, and air directions to find your best sound. Now, the reason why I say your best sound instead of the best sound is because everyone's position is going to be slightly different. In general, we should have the same basic setup. However, we all do have different bodies. Whether we have larger hands or more prominent lips, there are so many factors that can change our sound quality and the way that we're able to best present our own tone. The different areas I'm going to cover are head joint position, hand position, your embouchure, and the direction of your air. First off, let's talk about the head joint. Firstly, what's important to know is that ideally, you should be covering about a third of the tone hole. It's all about having the right amount of space to control as opposed to having something way too open or far too close so nothing can quite get in. It's like if you're playing around with a tap and you have the same amount of water going through, but you gradually cover too much of the hole where the water just splashes everywhere, or too little where you're not able to control the direction at all. It's the same general idea when it comes to how much of the hole you need to be covering with your bottom lip. And from there, that gives you an idea of where exactly in relation to the body the head joint should be. In general, you should have it relatively in line with the center of your keys. However, there is a little bit of wiggle room here, and I would always suggest turning out very slightly if you find that you're having difficulty getting your sound as open as you want. Beware of rolling it in past the halfway point, because this will make it a little bit more difficult to control where your air is going. Also, to be able to make sure you put it in the exact same position every single time, either use a permanent marker or some nail polish and put 2 dots. One on the head joint and one on the body so that you know to put those exactly in line with each other. Both the marker and the nail polish are very easy to remove from the flute, so there will be no permanent staining and it doesn't do any damage. So if you do end up moving your position over time, which does happen, you don't need to worry about having any incorrect position markings. Next, let's talk about the hand position. I know that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think about their hands taking any part in their sound. However, it is extremely important because of the first point we were talking about, your head joint position. And as I've spoken about in the past, it's all about the position of your right thumb on the body of the flute and how high you have your left thumb against the thumb key and where on your index finger you're putting the rest of the body of the flute. Because if you have your right thumb too far forward and not enough pressure on your index finger, then the flute is going to want to roll in because there's nothing keeping it stable. However, the same can also happen if you roll too far out. So if you put your thumb on your left hand way too high up on the thumb keys. So ideally, like I've spoken about, you want your right thumb more behind the flute than underneath it. And when you're practicing in front of the mirror, your keys should be pretty much parallel to the floor. So you shouldn't be able to see under the pads or the tops of the keys. And this makes sure that where you put your head joint is as accurate as you can get it. Now, let's talk about the embouchure. The 3 important points I want to raise here are the space between your lips, or the aperture. Like if you have a camera lens zooming in and out, it's the little hole that opens up in between your lips. The stability of your embouchure, so making sure that you're not moving it so much for different octaves or having them shaky from being too tense, which leads into the third point about embouchures, not doing smiley face. So first off, let's talk about the openness of the lips. Most of the time, when people are in the middle low register, things are fine, and that is where you are naturally more comfortable. So when you're at the start of your long tones and you're doing B, that is going to be a relatively good representation of how open your lips should be if you're able to get your good core sound there. And a tendency for a lot of people is when they go to the extreme ranges, so at the very top of the flute and the very bottom, we want to close off or roll our heads down. Sometimes the logic is, for the low register, this gives us better control of how low our air needs to go. But really, this just makes it more difficult to get a stable sound. Because if you keep moving things every time you're going down to the low register, you're just closing it off. What you want to do is keep the space between your lips so that you have all the wiggle room of your middle register. And now for the top register, when we close our mouths and roll our heads down, it's because we're worried that we're going to be playing too sharp and too loud or shrill. All this does is make our lives more difficult in terms of controlling it up there. Because again, if we're talking about the tap with the water running, the less space you have for the same amount of air to go through, the more likely it is to just spread and go in all directions, causing you to have an airier sound and less control of not only the sound quality, but the pitch. So instead of going up the register and doing this, you need to keep your lips open, much like when you're going to the low register. And that leads me into the smiley embouchure. Now, a lot of people, myself included, when we start the flute, will start off with a smiley embouchure because this gives the kind of stretch and, I hate to use this word, but tension we think we need to be able to control the stability of our lips and get the right size hole in between. But what this does is reduces our ability to control our direction of the air because we are stuck in one position, and since it does create a lot of tension, it ends up getting rid of the resonance that you have inside your face, your throat, and of course, as I say all the time, everything is connected. So listen to the difference when I do this 1 octave scale with the smiley embouchure, and then when I do it with my regular embouchure. Not only was the second one more comfortable, but I had a much bigger depth to the sound. You could hear the harmonics within the different pitches, and it overall was a much warmer and controlled tone. And this finally leads me into the last point, air direction. If you find you're having difficulty getting stability and good sound in your high register, what you need to do is bring your bottom jaw forward, which will help you angle your air direction up. In general, the higher your sound goes, the higher the direction of your air needs to be, because this will create a greater cut in the edge of your head joint, and this will let you kick up the air speed so that you can hit the higher notes with better clarity and without having to resort to overblowing and losing control of your dynamics. So from the side, it'll look like this. It's not a huge difference in terms of your position, but it is enough to aid in the stability. And the air direction should not affect your overall embouchure or the space between your lips. This is merely something that you can add in as opposed to something that will change the rest of your position. So just as a recap, the factors we talked about for your best sound quality are the position of your head joint, your hand position, your embouchure, and your air direction. So again, that tip was explore different positions, embouchures, and air directions to be able to find your best sound. I hope you find this week's tip helpful. Sound is something that we're always going to be indulging in, struggling with. It's our best friend and our worst enemy. It can make or break a performance, and it's something we can control if we just take the time to know exactly what goes into it. I'll see you all next week. Flute happy, position happy, and sing happy. I've started getting requests to make videos of me just playing, and I'm considering starting doing a midweek thing. Not gonna tell you specifically what I'm gonna play yet, but if anyone has any specific demands, let me know, and I'll do them, because I aim to entertain.